I'm your host, Effie Pilarino, and today I have a very special guest, my friend Mamadou. Mamadou Touré is, and we met in 2017, I think, in Chuk. There was this amazing conference by the SIIA around faith in finance, where different faiths came together and signed an agreement about supporting investments in finance. So I always remember that moment. Mamadou, first of all, let me welcome you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you and to have an opportunity to share some perspective. And thank you so much.
Yeah, you know, I was thinking very much of you, your vision lately as I'm writing, continuing to write a book that I started 2-3 years ago that is really focused on blockchain. And the reason that I started writing this book is not because of cryptocurrencies or you know, the applications and use cases of blockchain, but rather because I felt that there was a strong alignment with core spiritual principles that we are all becoming more aware of. And I thought of you, and I wanted to discuss with you this topic and hear your perspective. So for some people, this might seem odd, but I want to ask you how you connect in your work, in your purpose, spirituality, and the principles of blockchain technology.
So basically, you know, blockchain technology for me is just, as I got to understand it, it was the expression of, I would say, a human universal principle, right? And that goes way back in what I would call the ancient wisdom, right? If you know what blockchain ultimately is about, a decentralized validation of data or a transaction, right? So if you look in my culture in Africa, what was interesting is that before colonization, right? So what used to be done, for instance, when you had a piece of land, right, you would call 4 or 5 elders, right, to officially vet that this piece of land was yours, and it would go from this place to that place. And whenever there would be a dispute or a lack of clarity of who the land belongs to and how far does it go, then they would call some of those elders, even if 1 or 2 were out of the village, you would need 3 of them to approve and validate that, yes, this is your land, right? And it didn't necessarily have to be elders, but it need to be people that are credible within the community. And then with colonization, then we had to deal with a central validation entity, you know, the city hall, and then you had the
Mamadou, I think our connection is not so good. So can you repeat what happened after colonization?
So after it became then centralized at the city hall, and it led to a lot of mismanagement and corruption, right? And the challenge was to rely on one single entity that is fallible. And when you look at you know, the emergence of Bitcoin, it was ultimately the same principle, the reflection that the community is stronger than the individual. such, then let's rely on a decentralized way to have different computers to effectively validate this transaction and this principle. And therefore, for me, blockchain brings us back to this very essence of what makes us human in terms of relying on our interdependence and on the collective. And if you look at the meaning of Ubuntu itself, which is why we chose the name, it means I am because we are. It highlights our human interdependence. Now, and the fact that we can only be not as a standalone individual or being, but we exist through others, and they're at the same time the custodians of our existence, our prosperity, and so on. So for this, those two concepts, which is either ultimately means humanity, right? You find where you know, you had in Rwanda, they call it Ubuntu, that means the human. In Swahili, they say Utu. In DRC Lingala, they say Abatu. This, which is ultimately what the essence that makes us human. So the essence is ultimately this interdependence, the fact that the individual exists through the community, and as such, you have the same value and intrinsic meaning when you took Ubuntu, but that's what blockchain is. And it's when you look at it, when you look at the algorithm, etc., it's just a mathematical interpretation of a spiritual principle.
Very interesting.
That's how I see. Yeah.
So Mamadou.
So ultimately, also, where it becomes very.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, after you.
No, I wanted to say that what you say resonates with me, because I've been thinking about the fact that our evolution in financial markets, where I'm more focused, was mostly 20 or 30 years ago. We were looking at maximizing shareholder value, you know, in corporations and capital markets. Then we moved more recently to the principle and the idea of maximizing stakeholder value. But I think that going forward in this decade, we will be more focused in maximizing value in a broad sense, beyond financial, of communities, as you said. So focus on communities and the value, both financial, but much broader, economic in the broad sense, of the well-being and the social intangible values of the communities. So it's very much, I feel that it's pushing in that direction.
So I completely agree with you. Right now, think of this. Wouldn't it be ultimately the law of karma? First, you maximize shareholder value, and then you realize that it all pulls the blanket on one direction, and it creates tension that makes it unsustainable. And then you look at improving it further and deploy your principle of stakeholders value, which makes it great, but then you realize that, okay, everyone within the community and all the stakeholders are happy, but suddenly our planet is having major issues. And then they have another form of karma. And then you have to bring it further in a holistic perspective, which is a universal value, right? And that's probably harder to achieve, but that's what makes full infinite sustainability of whatever we do. And I think that's a natural evolution process towards which we're going. And when you understand that everything in the universe is interconnected, so now think of internet. It's a primitive way to remodel or reproduce this whole interconnection, first among human beings, and then now we're moving into the internet of, right? Which is this whole thing where as everything gets interconnected, and then you bring blockchain in the middle of it, then you're slowly reproducing the Akashic records to a certain extent. So, and this embraces this principle of as within, so without, and as above, so below, where we, de facto, there's a universal pattern in what we do. And that's why you find the Fibonacci sequence in so many
in nature.
Nature. And as beings of nature, we evolve progressively towards reproducing what we see as an ultimate state of perfection and oneness. And it happens over time across generation, and as the human consciousness also evolves. And what we're seeing now is this very acceleration where internet plugs in. Now you're going to have the internet of money, and then chain, where you will have this context of whatever I do impact everything around me. Whatever I do is recorded no matter what I do. And that's why it becomes extremely powerful. And as you look at this whole transition, and you know, from the Kali Yuga to the Satya Yuga, or for the Pisces age to the Aquarian age, yes, we enter the age of knowledge and truth. Then you need blockchain, and then you need interconnection, and then you also need the fact that there's less things that will be hidden, there is less power that will be centralized, and everything will depend on one another. And you know, this whole point, Ubuntu meaning I am because we are, is the very epitome that our team and myself have tried to represent, in the sense that if I am you, you are me, and I am everything around me. Therefore, as with anything I do, I need to take that into consideration.
It's very interesting, because all this can also be connected with the principle of oneness that many either religions or philosophies or system thinking are highlighting and bringing to the forefront. And also, Mamadou, you made me think again of the principle and the idea that everything exists in the form of potentiality in the universe. So our job is to calibrate our energies and our frequencies to tap into what we choose to tap. And I think, you know, this is an amazing moment under these weird circumstances that we are living, to become more aware of these issues. And people like us closer to technology, we have to bring them in. We can't be using technology in the, what I would call it, male transactional way. We have to bring the female holistic approach. That is, I cannot see.
It's a solid point.
Yes.
It's a solid point, and I'll tell you why. Think of technology and think of computer science, right? What is it at the end of the day? It is binary. It's a sequence, permanent sequence, and 1 and 0s. That's all it is. Now, what is 1 and 0? Is the feminine and the masculine. Is the yin and the yang. Is light and darkness. You can call it whatever you want. But to be able to, the force of creation is that permanent engagement and tension between the masculine and the feminine, between the 0 and 1, between light and darkness. And technology is ultimately naturally reproducing that, right? And indeed, as we entering this new age, and I've been working very closely with Sheikh Abdul Al-Qasimi on a project of the Ubuntu Foundation. Yes, we are entering an age where there is a stronger need for the feminine to emerge, for where creativity matters, where nurturing is becoming the solution in these times of crisis, right? Why? Because we've pulled way too much towards a certain energy that is strongly dominated by ego. And as we did that, it has led to a lot of crises, wars, conflicts, etc. If we don't balance it, it's self-destruction. Now, and the point also is, and the feminine energy is not just men. Every man have both energies between them. We are ourselves as a guy, if I can call myself as such. I'm a combination of, you know, X and Y chromosomes to start with, right? I have a right brain and a left brain. I have, you know, a heart with ventricles. So and it requires for us, and that's why I think the transformation that our society is going through is towards, because it was not meant to be weak, it was not accepted to show emotions, etc. But it's if you lead from the heart, that's where magic happens ultimately, because that's the one thing we have in common.
Exactly.
That's the same beat
And now
with one another, regardless.
Mamadou, science is helping us by recognizing that we essentially have three brains that are interconnected, and it's the brain, as in the physical brain, there's the heart and the gut, those three energy centers.
And the guts.
Yeah. So we're getting there.
Indeed.
I mean, you and I could be speaking for hours. I know that we have limited time. Before we close, do you want to tell us a little bit more about the Ubuntu Foundation?
Yeah, sure. So we've tried the best we could, you know, as we designed it. So Ubuntu Tribe, as you know, right, has this mission to create equal opportunities, equal opportunities for all by leveraging responsibly the natural resources of Mother Earth. And as we do tokenize and later other assets, the real principle was to think of redistribution, right? Gold carries an energy. That's why we chose it as the first primary asset that we will tokenize. As we wanted to also empower people by giving them access to potential wealth and knowledge, by addressing the question of, you know, financial inclusion is taking away is keeping out of the global economy at least 3 to 4 billion people, because they cannot interact or transact on the web, so or internationally. And as we did that, we launched a project in a way that will get us together closer, and by sourcing those assets in an ethical way, right? With respecting Mother Earth and what is being, the abundance that is being provided to us. And the ultimate goal as we did that was also to say, as we empower people, we also want to enlighten them, right? And we want to help people shift or raise their consciousness. Therefore, we've made the Ubuntu Foundation the larger shareholder of Ubuntu Tribe. And the mission of Ubuntu Foundation is to shift human consciousness by, and that's the co-founders of the Ubuntu Foundation are myself and Sheikh Abdul Kasimi Arja, which is actually interesting, where you have, you know, both energies, male and female, if I may, to basically look at creating a balanced, a balanced structure that could help people awaken further, right? And as we did that, the proceeds of all 5% of the proceeds of all transactions of Ubuntu Tribe will go and fund the foundation. And when I say that the foundation role, mission is to shift human consciousness, we want to do that by working on the 5 elements: investing, supporting, nurturing innovative businesses or business models or technologies that help work on the 5 elements. Water, where we can provide clean water with new technologies that allow decentralized access to water. That would be also fire, renewable energy that may give also people, everyone, a chance to get access to the energy that will help us move and grow. And earth, which is, of course, regenerative agriculture, and air, which is new means of communication that really allow an integrated global human community and consciousness to emerge. And last but not least, love. And this one is very important for us, and that's what we're starting with, which is for us the 5th element, and of course the most important. And as we do that, the love sequence include healthcare, but new healthcare, relying on ancient traditional wisdom, nature-based medicine, nature-based science. It also links to education, innovative education that is based more, that are human-centric versus knowledge accumulation-centric. And of course, ancient and ancestral knowledge, where we try as much as possible to remind people that there's a divine in us and that it was all written from the beginning. And therefore, bringing back to the forefront those ancient wisdom, ancient tradition, and ancient knowledge that have made the greatness of past civilization, where the key to our futures might lie past, and in understanding where we're coming from and how we got here. And some of the, for instance, we can't rebuild the pyramids today. It means that there's been some knowledge lost along the way that we need to go back and nurture and harness. And those knowledge were generally fully in line and in harmony with nature. And that's where we want to head as a collective. So those are the 5 elements that the foundation will work in supporting, first in Africa and Middle East and around the world down the road. And that's really the ultimate mission, where you combine Ubuntu Tribe, which is empowerment, and the foundation that is enlightenment.
Mamadou, thank you so much. Wow, what an amazing inspiration discussing with you. Thanks again, and hope to—
Thank you for having me.
To talk to you next year and learn more after the launch of your project.